Hey guys, Unit 12. We are going to work with square roots, or we like to call them radicals. The first thing that I like to do is make a list of my perfect squares, because that will help me simplify radicals pretty much this entire unit. So on the right here, I'm going to write down my first 5 or 6 or so. I know that the square root of 1 is my first perfect square, because the square root of 1 equals 1. My next perfect square is the square root of 4, because I know that 2 times 2 gives me 4. And then I have square root of 9, which we know is 3, because 3 times 3 is 9. And then square root of 16, and the square root of 25, and the square root of 36. And we can keep going if we want to. We did the first, I think, 15 today in class. But just using these right here will help us break down pretty much any perfect square we're asking you to simplify. So for the first one here, I'm looking at the square root of 20. I'm trying to figure out what is the biggest perfect square, these numbers here, that goes into 20. Well, I know that 1 will go into 20. 1 goes into anything, so 1 works for all of them. I'm going to go down my list. Does 4 go into 20? Yes, it does. Let's make sure nothing else works. 9 does not go into 20. 16 does not go into 20. 25 does not go into 20. And then we're obviously getting too big. So we can clearly see that the square root of 4 is the biggest perfect square that will go into 20 evenly. So I'm going to use that, the square root of 4. And then I'm asking myself, what number do I multiply by 4 that gives me 20? So 4 times what number is 20? 4 times 5 is 20. So I know that I can break down the square root of 20 using the square root of 4 and the square root of 5. And then, which one of these was perfect? My first one, the square root of 4, that is just 2. So I'm going to rewrite that as 2. And the square root of 5 is not perfect, so we leave that as the square root of 5. So my answer here is 2 radical 5.
Alright guys, for number 2, we'll go through this relatively quickly. So we're looking at breaking down radical 40. So the first thing I want to do is I want to look at my radical column. So which one can go? So, I mean, everyone wants to say, well, 1 can go into 40. Well, yes, 1 can go into everything. So we can really just kind of cross that one right out. Can 4 go into 40? Yeah, you bet. It can go in there 10 times. Can 9? Not evenly. Nor 16, 25, and obviously I'm getting too big. So when we break this down, you should get, I usually list my perfect square first. So I'm going to do radical 4. And then, like Mr. Glant just said, what do I multiply 4 by to get 40? I multiply it by radical 10, simplify, and we know that the square root of 4 is 2, and then we just bring down that radical 10.
Alright, we'll show you one more. Number 3 here, radical 18. I'm going to break this down into 2 radicals. Looking at my list, what numbers go into 18? 1 obviously does. 4 does not go into 18. 9 does. 9 times 2 is 18. 16 does not go into 18, and then I'm too large. So I know that the one I want to use here is my radical 9. So I'm going to go with radical 9, and we said 9 times 2 is 18. And then radical 9 is just 3. Radical 2 is non-perfect, so we'll leave it alone. 3 radical 2.